What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show. As always, I like to say you're blessed. I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. Do know that this is the place of epic conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations, and the Dr. Vibe show was a 2018 Innovation Award winner, handed out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I have been waiting for this conversation for over a year. It was initially supposed to happen over a year ago. And then about a few weeks ago, one of our Black male thought leaders that is on tonight sparked me to have it again. And the nice thing is, he was introduced to me by the other Black male thought leader that's with us right now, who needs to take himself off mute because he's on mute right now. But we'll get him in just a moment. So tonight, we're going to be hosting another epic conversation called, oh, it's actually part two. A few weeks ago, we had Dr. Lamont Francies on talking about Black male teachers in K-12 schools, and he rocked for 2 hours. Like, had to cut the recording off because we weren't going to get any more stuff in. So I said, we had cut. And that isn't cutting the cable, we had to cut the epic conversation. Well, tonight, we're joined by Dr. Lawarence A. Rasheed, who is a regular, a good friend of the Dr. Vibe show, home of Epic Conversations, who introduced me to Dr. Francies. And tonight we're going to have a roundtable conversation about Black male teachers in K-12 schools in America. Gentlemen, how we doing?
Good. How you doing, Dr. Vibe?
As I said, blessed and highly favored, jacked for this conversation tonight. A year and a half in the making, and it's finally making it happen. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to have the new guy give him his background first. So the new guy is Dr. Francies. So do share a little bit with us, Dr. Francies.
Well, how you doing out there? My name is Dr. Lamont Francies. I am right now at this time I am an administrator in the Mount Diablo Unified School District. I've been in education now on goodness, this will be my 18th year in education. I started off as a substitute teacher, later became an elementary school teacher working in San Francisco. I later went on to teach special education in Solano County, which is in California. Later, I taught more special ed in Sacramento, in South Sacramento. I left there and I became a counselor at McClymonds High School and West Oakland Middle School. Left there, became a counselor again in Antioch Unified School District. And from there, I got into administration in the Mount Diablo Unified School District. So I have experience in and out of the classroom as a teacher, counselor, and as an administrator. I'm also an adjunct professor of sociology at Brandman University. Also, I am the president of the Black Educators Association, Mount Diablo Unified School District, as well as a full-time pastor. I pastored the Delta Bay Church of Christ, which is located in the city of Antioch, 913 Sunset Drive in the city of Antioch. And I've been the full-time pastor for the last 15 years. And also, I hit up several Black parent groups around the county area. So I'm pretty active. And then I am a full-time husband and full-time father. I have 5 children, 11 years and under. So my plate is pretty full. So that's somewhat of my background in education.
I love how you say. I like how you say you're pretty active. Pretty active. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You stay there. You stay there.
Yes,
stay
sir.
there.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Francies, you're not a stranger to the Dr. Vibe show, but there are many people watching who have not heard of you. Do give a little background about yourself.
Oh, of myself?
No, Dr. Rasheed.
Dr. Rasheed. Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So that's a hard act to follow. Follow my brother out. He knows how to bring people out and bring himself out. And what he didn't mention is that we met in Antioch. So when he worked in Antioch, that's where we met. Mm-hmm. So that's important to know. That's when the brotherhood started. But for the listening audience and those who are looking on, wow, it's over 25 years in education, in various capacity, elementary, middle, high school, and now at the collegiate level. So yeah, it's I started off as a pup, um, and a teacher's assistant. In undergrad, I substituted. Um, always knew that I wanted to go in education in some capacity, and you know, we were in Antioch, my wife at the time, and I started substituting, and they said you're pretty good, and the rest is kind of history. I went on and got my credential. Um, of course, 2008, with a colleague of mine, we started our charter school, which was called RAMP. It was designed for Black males in particular. It ended up being a co-ed school, but it still did some good things in the short term. Um, so from that point, I pursued my first graduate, my first master's, and got an administrative degree and became an administrator at another school, teaching, and then again, I got my administrative credential, went in to get my doctoral degree, and because I wanted to go into academia, but it's just not that easy. And then after that, I was still teaching and, of course, doing a lot of work with Black males. So I've been doing mentoring work for several years, and that work never stopped. And Dr. Francies and I, we actually kind of collaborated. I forget the year, but with Antioch when they had the best summer of the African American Male Initiative Program, because he was at the head. So, and work with that brother, it was just, it's not working.
Man, it's fun.
You're working with your
best
brother.
time.
We had a blast. And so after that, I was crazy enough to go get another master's in reading instruction, because I'm really interested in the ways in which we can improve upon the literacy of African American males. And so after being in K through 12, like I said, over 25 years, I had the opportunity to be where I am currently, in the great Pacific Northwest, working at a community college as a faculty, as a BSU advisor, as a director for the Rites of Passage, which just concluded on past Thursday, which was phenomenal. I do have some footage, Dr. Vibe, to share with you and Dr. Francis. It was really, really cool. I'm still kind of tired from that 4 weeks, but I'm holding up pretty well, I think. But yeah, that's pretty much the Cliff Notes version of my educational background.
Excellent. And we already have a question, but we're going to hold it off before I ask the first conversation piece. And that is, why did each of you as Black men choose the path of education?
Go ahead, Doc.
So it's pretty much the same story that I always tell. It's the same narrative. So I'm originally from San Diego, California, and I went to community college at Mesa College. And, I was in the counseling office and I saw this poster with this young Black male on the poster. And the question asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the sign in big bold letters said, alive. And again, even, just restating that story, it still, kind of gets the back, the hairs on my neck to kind of stand at attention. And so from that point, I knew I wanted to do something in the capacity of education. At that time, there was, a mentoring organization. Well, it wasn't a mentoring; it was a people advocacy, and where they were specifically working with African American males, and they kind of implemented this program from LA. This was back in 1989. So I've been kind of familiar with this and researched and doing this work for a while. And so I was enamored with these mentors, these people advocates who were instilling into these young black men. And they were educators as well. They had various backgrounds, counselors, math teachers, so on and so forth, right? And so from that point, I knew I wanted to emulate that. And I even spoke with them about doing that very thing. And, Dr. John Brown, who's still a good mentor to me today, he said, we know you can do this work, but you have to complete your own education first. So that kind of, put me on that trajectory. I went to University of Pine Bluff in Arkansas, HBCU, and, got an undergraduate degree in English. And then I knew that I wanted to come out to California. So some of the credential requirements for California, they were different, right? So I knew I had to come out here and make sure I satisfy those. But that was really kind of the thing that really got me interested into education. And I would say, in addition to that, I've always loved the babies. I've always loved children. So I think those two together really set my trajectory in order.
Excellent. Dr. Francis?
We thank you for that, Dr. Rasheed. One of the reasons, I'm going to be honest. I wish I could be as poetic as my brother. I back into education. So my background, I have a bachelor's degree from Pepperdine University, but my bachelor's degree is in telecommunications and radio and television broadcast. I went to Pepperdine to write for television. And I realized around my senior year, I don't know if this is what I really wanted to do. And so I went off to grad school and I majored in sociology. And while I was in grad school, it was hard finding a job. And, outside of the field that I had my bachelor's in. And so there were a few jobs that I could have received. I could have worked at Walmart or become a substitute teacher. And so I chose substitute teaching. And I had fun with it. I thought that it was something that I was just going to do. I never saw myself as a teacher. I didn't want to be Mr. Cooper. I wanted to get it because you didn't see a lot of black male educators. So it was something that I didn't think I wanted to do. But the minister that I was attending in this town where my graduate school was a teacher. He was a minister. He was the full-time senior minister. And also he taught sixth grade. And so he was the one who really kind of pushed education and said this would be a good career to go into. And I saw that teachers were highly overworked and underpaid, but it was something that I felt that I could get into. Then as I got into education and I realized that it was a great way to get back, one of the reasons why I stayed in education, was really to interrupt patterns of inappropriate paternalistic pedagogy that really takes our young black minds and twists them, and really, I would say, take young black lives and really kind of turn them into robots or zombies, and really miseducate them. And I was really, once I saw how the system worked, education then became my passion because everyone has to go through the K through 12 walls. And I realized how much of an impact teachers have on children. And once I realized the power that a teacher had, I said, this is the field that I know I need to stay in because it's not a high paying, career, position, but it is a career that I think is rewarding. And then I saw the impact. And one of the reasons why I stayed K-12 is because I saw the impact that I could have in the local community. And also, I, as a senior minister, the K-12 experience gave me access to people that I would probably never have access to, and so that is one of the reasons why I chose the field of education. And then as a pastor, I realized that in education, I would always have Sundays off. So that I'm telling you the truth. No one would ever make me work on a Sunday. So I said, let me stay with this field. So that was the reason why I got into education.
Okay. And Dre from New York City says you're a pastor and a teacher, correct?
Yes, I am.
There you go. And I think that's something that Dre was once a pastor. He still is a teacher. So something you both have in common. And just want to shout out the people who are on Get Vocal right now. Dre, Dr. Tachi, who is the host of the livest live stream in regards to media, tech, and pop culture. It's called Mediascope. It's on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. on Instagram Live, and then 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Facebook Live and Mediascope and Periscope. I was thinking Periscope, Mediascope, Periscope. And also thanks for Luke for dropping by, my Canadian friend from Windsor, and also Tony and Melvin Lars from Louisiana. And then also we have people on not the Periscope platform. We also have people watching on YouTube Live. So if you have any questions or comments, please make them. If you're on Get Vocal, there is a room open. So if you want to jump in, ask a question, make a comment, that's fantastic. I'm monitoring everything as much as possible. I am multi-purposing, not multitasking. There is a difference. So getting back to the conversation, let me just make the comment. Wow, questions are really coming. So Dre is saying, amazing. That is one of the reasons why he wanted to become a teacher, because he was a pastor. And he said he wanted to plant a church and not to have to sacrifice my family to do both.
I could talk about that. That'll be another show.
Yeah, okay.
Because the church I pastor, I planted as well.
Excellent. He also says, I would come in, but the brethren are looking too sharp and I'm in a t-shirt. No, come on in, man. Come on in, Dre. Please, come on. Doesn't matter. I also want to thank, come on in, Dre, please. Big Bad Brad has also joined us on the Get Vocal platform. So, gentlemen, when you first entered in your journey, you said there weren't too many other black male faces around. How did that feel?
Go ahead, Chief.
Doc.
Oh.
Go ahead, Doc. I went first last time. We alternate.
Well, I can tell you this. With black men in this country making up less than 2% of America's teachers, it left a void, I think, in me. There was something that was lacking. A fraternity was lacking. I felt a sense of duty because I was tempted to quit. Black men are the least, out of all men, our ethnicity is the least likely to get into the field of education, and we're the first to leave. And so, and a lot of reason has to do with the lack of black men on in K-12 campuses. But I felt this huge responsibility to stay in the profession. Let me say this, Dr. Vibe. I went out for an interview not too long ago, and I was telling Dr. Rasheed about it, to a school where I would have been the only black staff member. I didn't get the job, but I did. I remember on the interview telling the potential employer that there was always a level of anxiety with me in coming into this position. And one of the reasons why that was the case is because I heard that I would feel like Jackie Robinson. I would feel like that if I messed up, if for whatever reason I was not able to perform the job, then they would hire no other blacks after me. And so I felt like that I was carrying the burden of 40 million Black people in this country. And so it was tough. I had a huge level of anxiety. I knew I would be the only Black person in the teachers' lounge. I knew that I would be commonly culturally misunderstood by students, staff, and parents. And it was tough. It was tough. And I knew that my success on that job was based on my ability to assimilate into the dominant culture. And so, yeah, with that, I think that alone stops a lot of Black men from wanting to get into the field of education. And the Black men that tend to stay in that field find some kind of cultural fraternity by which they can culturally express their fears, their anxieties, and serve as a support group for others. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, Dre has jumped in. I am glad he's jumped in. Dre, how we doing?
Doing good. I feel like I'm a little.
How you doing, brother?
What's going on, brother?
Please add to the
Summertime in New York City. It's 91
That's
degrees
all
out.
right.
I can't.
No problem.
It's all good. Just share with the two gentlemen.
all good.
You're an educator yourself, and please add to the conversation. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm a teacher in New York City. For the past 2 years, I taught third grade. I'm a special education teacher. Next year, I'll be teaching fourth grade in the ICT classroom setting. And I'm going into my third year teaching. So it's still fairly new to me, but it's new to me in the public school sector. But I've always been working with children, youth, and families, whether it be in church or through Head Start, some way, in some capacity. I was always working with families, youth, in the area of education. Even if it was in the church, I was an assistant pastor of youth, children, and families. So I was, teaching there as well. I'm proud to be an educator, and I'm proud to be a Black male educator, because it is rare, especially in the elementary level, because there's not a lot of us. And I just came in, so I don't know where the trajectory of the conversation is going, and I don't want to veer off. But as a Black educator, I found that and a new Black educator, I find that in the elementary school setting, Black men they seem to be wanted in the public school system, especially in Black neighborhoods, but not to be more of an educator, but to be more of a disciplinarian presence in the school.
Yeah.
And I find that slightly problematic. My first year teaching, I had the worst, and I'm not saying it like it's like my perspective. The data shows, behavioral observational data, I had the worst class in this whole school. And they thought that because I was a Black male, I can handle it. I'm a new teacher. Before I'm a Black male, in that arena, I'm a new teacher. If I can't teach, these kids will not behave. So I was brand new, very inexperienced. And I had to find ways to relate to the students, because although I'm a Black male and I do believe in discipline, my discipline style is not to go into a classroom like I'm a correction officer and start putting my foot down and start beating my baton, making sure that these kids follow my rules, because that's not the type of Black male I want my students or my kids to see. So I tried to come in with an empathetic, understanding type of approach, where I'm trying to relate to the students, their behavioral needs, identify why they behave the way they do, not just expect them to listen to me because I said so, because they have no clue who I am. What I found, though, with some of the white teachers, and in my school there's 7 male teachers and 3 Black male teachers. Well, 2 Black male teachers and 1 Black male administrator. And the conversation was that I need to be more like the Black male administrator. He's an amazing administrator. Like he's really good. But they seem to put all of us in one box and tell us that we're expected to behave and act and do exactly what everybody else is doing, or to appear a certain way. We can't smile. We can't, get excited when students do the right things. We got to be stoic and serious, and that's not my personality. And that's not who I am. I'm excited. When a kid gets something right, I make a big deal out of it. If a student is misbehaving, I may put some bass in my voice and stop them in their tracks, but I'm going to try to understand why they're behaving the way they are, so that next time they learn, develop some self-coping and self-resiliency skills, so that it doesn't repeat itself. And a lot of times I find that the white teachers in the school, they don't really want that. They want me to just, put my foot down and make sure that the kids are following their orders, and that's it. So I'm not sure if that's where the conversation was going.
No, that's fantastic. So I'm going to first have Dr. Rasheed respond, add to that, and then Dr. Francies. So Dr. Rasheed, what do you want to add to what Dre said? Because I've heard that from a lot of Black educators. Okay, I don't.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate, phenomenon that happens. It's reified, right? Because as Black male educators, we're supposed to be just the disciplinarian. We're supposed to come in there and just, law and order. And that really does us a disservice. And for that, I mean, like Brother Dre was saying, our approach is not monolithic. So we're just not going to come at it one. It does a disservice far to him, not necessarily anyone else. So I think that's just a very unfortunate thing in itself, and it happens so frequently. Where I recall when I was teaching.
I thought that was going to happen with Dr. Francies.
Okay. No, I can speak to Mr. Dre and just kind of speak to what he is, and I totally agree and concur what he's talking about 110%. Black men are more likely to leave this profession than anybody else, because studies say that we have higher levels of burnout, because we feel the calling to go into the toughest schools, and we mostly teach. We're concentrated in urban schools, and in those urban schools, and I don't know, Mr. Dre, your experience in this area, but I've always received the toughest students in the school. I've gone to school when I taught at a special ed school. I remember going to the school and the administrator coming in, and she went around to all the teachers when I was hired, and she asked each teacher, give me your worst students, the students that you're having the most problems with. And they threw them all in my classroom, right? And so, I had the worst behaving students out of anybody. Now, my check was the same as everybody else, but they just automatically expected me to go ahead and deal with the worst problems. And so what I did is I went around to each and every student's home. I knocked on their door, and I had to introduce myself, and I gave clear expectations, what I expect, what I need you to do. But I told them, bottom line is we're going to learn and we're going to have fun. And I was a younger teacher then, but when I think back, and I'm thinking, you don't do that. And what happened over the years is I never got a chance to build up my pedagogy, my pedagogical practices. I was never able to learn constructed meaning and Common Core and all these things, these initiatives that they have in California. Even when, as an administrator, they're working on, scheduling and testing and all these other things, they would always say, well, Dr. Francies, could you go deal with those kids running in the hall? Or can you go do this or do that? And so they think of Black educators, and I always use the analogy like Black quarterbacks. Like, we are not smart enough to stay in the pocket and dissect the defense, but we're just good athletes and we run, right? And it's the same with Black educators. They think all we do is discipline. We're disciplinarians, but we're not good educational leaders, right? And so we don't get the same exposure as our white counterparts to the teacher development that helps us become educational leaders. And when we try to do so, they throw us back in discipline roles. And so it's almost as if they hire us not because they want to, but they hire us because they have to. And they want us to be that brother that was whooping Kunta. And then we end up becoming the black face of the white agenda. And I refuse to do that. I refuse to do so. But this is, and that's why I totally agree with Mr. Dre. We have to go ahead and prove ourselves time and time again that we are good educational leaders, that we understand pedagogy, we understand curriculum, we have good lesson plans. We have to prove that we're not just there to give 3 dittos in a movie and just to get kids to sit down. Yeah. That's it. We have to prove that time and time again. And now, going on 20 years in education, I'm still having to prove myself time and time again that I know how to be an educational leader.
Okay, before we get that, Dr. Rasheed back, just going to catch up with some comments here. Dr. Tachi is saying that also points to the fact that the system automatically labels children of color as problematic and in need of discipline. And saying, she also says these people watch too much Lean on Me and Stand and Deliver, LOL. And
great movie.
And Tony Davis is saying coping skills are supposed to parallel with critical thinking skills and moral standards. So, Dr. Rasheed, you're back with us. I wonder if you can continue with the comments you were making, if you can leave where you left off.
Yeah, I think Brother Dr. Francies was really kind of putting the nail in the coffin, because what often happens is black male, so their development becomes arrested, and so they're just pigeonholed into the disciplinarian role. Yeah. That's it. That's what they're known for. And the eerie irony is when we show that we have the prowess, the acumen, and pedagogy and instruction and curriculum development and all these other facets of education, when we show that, it's often met with some condescension. Like, what? You actually know instruction? You know this? Oh, you read? You know some of the new theories? You know all these things, the latest instruction. And the pendulum swings, every which way. But when you, show them that you are very astute, that you're an educational leader, and that you are unapologetically for the babies, and this is the ways in which we go about doing that. It's often, especially as a black man, it's met with a lot of disdain, because how dare you, as a black man, tell me how to become an educational leader, or how to improve upon my instruction, or how to curriculum map, or any of these facets of education. How dare you? You just supposed to go over there and tell little Leroy to sit down and buff him up and everything and rough him up, and that's it. And again, all the brothers on the panel are pretty much conveying the same thing. This is what oftentimes we're relegated to. And again, I say no, that's not it. I have a multiplicity of talents in education. So I'm just not relegated to being that. That's what you are trying to relegate me to. And I'm not gonna allow you to do that. So when I speak up and speak out and everything, you're like, man, I wish this need to grow would shut up. But no, I'm not doing this to show out. I'm doing it because there's other brothers, there's other sisters and everything who are intimidated by you, but I'm not. Because I know way more than you do. I have way more degrees than you, way more credentials than you do. And it's not about that. I'm connected to the babies and the people. And so when we go out there like Dr. Francis and Dre in the community, they know us. They know we put in that work. They know we're shooting in the gym, right? They know we're about that life. And so the credentials and everything really don't matter at the end of the day, because when the babies see you, they're like, oh, there's Dr. Rasheed. We know he has our best intent. He has our best interest, right? And the parents know. That's why when I was talking to Dr. Francies last week, you know, we couldn't even go to the grocery stores because we get stopped. My son used to hate going to the store with me. We get stopped all the time by community members, students, former students,
Lord Jesus,
colleagues. The list goes on and on and on. And I know Dr. Francis is a pastor, so it's double for him.
I don't go to
But it
supermarket.
was just,
I go to supermarket.
just upset, just furious. Like, man, you know, everybody in every single instance, it turns into a little conference.
IEPs in the parking lot.
Man, everything. And it's not like in passing, we're really concerned. There's an altruism associated with our being. We really want what's best for our babies. So when we see them out in the community, we'll check on them. Hey, what them grades like? How you doing? Whatever the case may be, we're going to check up on them. And it's just not in passing. We really want to know what's going on. And so these type of things, these type of characteristics that we bring into education, I think often intimidates other folks, particularly white women, right? Because they don't have that same cachet. They don't have that same rapport. Now, I'm not saying that all of them don't have that or they can't get it. Yeah. But again, this is something that becomes very organic with us, right? It's just something that we do. And it's unfortunate that they like to limit us just to being the dean or disciplinarian when we have so much more to offer.
Well, you know, I think a lot of it has to do with the mindset of occupation. For many, it's just a job. They got the degree and now they're teaching because that's their job. Like I can relate to what you were saying. I live in the community that I teach in, and every time I'm out, almost every time I'm seeing my students, I'm seeing their parents. And true story, I was at the supermarket. The person right before me, recognized me on Class Dojo. We use Class Dojo in our classroom. It was one of my students' teachers, parents. I've never met her before. So she says, Mr. Harrison. I said, hey, how are you? Because, you know, I don't want to act like I don't know who they are in case we met. So I'm like, hey, how are you? And she said, yeah, I'm so-and-so's mother. I said, oh, we've never met. She said, yeah, I recognize you on Class Dojo. And we started talking. And we literally had an IEP meeting right there. So it's funny that you said that, Dr. Lamont. But I definitely relate to what you're saying, because when I tell my colleagues that, hey, I ran into so-and-so at the supermarket, their response is usually, oh, I would never. Like, I would be mortified if I see any of my students outside of the class.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Like,
exactly.
Wow. Yeah, they're trying to duck and dodge. Yeah, they're not trying to see them. And this is also brings into play, you know, your moral character, right? Your moral fiber and everything. Because when you're seen as much as we are in the community, you can't be out there doing the wrong thing. Now, I always, Lamont, Dr. Francies praise because, and again, I'm not bashing pastors, but he's one of those true pastors. He doesn't stink, drink. He ain't out there, chasing skirts or anything like that. He doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke, any of those things, right? And so I'm pretty much the same way. I'm not as good as the pastor, right? So I'm not perfect, but you're not gonna see me out there, drunk, smoking, acting belligerent or anything like that, because I know, and my dad always told me this, and I told it to I tell it to young people all the time. Somebody's always watching you, unbeknownst to you, right? Someone's always watching. So when we're in the community and everything, we have a responsibility. I mean, that responsibility doesn't stop. I mean, oftentimes when we want to let our hair down, we have to be out of the country, right, or other cities, because you can't do that with Dr. Francis. He doesn't do that anyway, because he's a straight up brother. He doesn't frolic in that madness. But but if you wanted to do anything like that, you definitely couldn't do it in the community. So when we have the charter school and they used to want to go to happy hour and stuff, I'm like, no, you can't do that. You can't have this shirt on representing our school and sit up here at the bar. That's not a good look. And so some people disagree with me, and I'm like, that you don't understand. It's bigger than just the job. You know what I mean? Right. This is something that we have to live out and carry ourselves and conduct ourselves in a way that's beneficial to our babies. And not that we put in on airs. I mean, my students here, we went out for my birthday here, and they were like, oh, You want something to drink? I'm like, yes, lemonade. You know, every time they see me, it's some lemonade. They're not going to see me drinking. They're not going to see me at the bar. You're not going to see me doing anything untoward because, again, it extends beyond the classroom.
I agree.
Right.
And I think, and I don't want to preface that. Like, I think that I work with a lot of great people, a lot of amazing teachers. They're very skilled teachers. So in my administration, actually, from the principal, she's a white lady, but she also gets it. She understands that there's a divide there that she knows exists, that she's trying to blur. So her and I have conversations often, and it's great to have a administrator who happens to be a white female who gets it. You know, she gets it. So we have conversations, and she wants to blur those lines, and she's purposeful about making her staff who are white uncomfortable by bringing up conversations like this with them. So so I think that like we're at least where I'm at, we're moving in the right direction, and even she mentioned how she appreciates my approach to addressing students. So it's more my colleagues that look at me as the disciplinarian than those that are my administrators. But I will come out. I'll leave now because I know somebody wanted to come into the seat and share a comment.
Yeah.
But thank you
So
so much for allowing
thank you, Dre. And after Tony's finished, if you want to come back,
Nick,
welcome,
brother.
Dre.
All right.
Thanks for making the conversation better, my man.
My pleasure.
Your brother.
Be well. Okay, Tony is in. All right. So, gentlemen, you're on the firing line. Come on in, Tony. How we doing?
I'm doing much better, and I guess I should ask the major question: what if the hokey pokey really is what it's all about? Just to be funny here, but no, I do have some questions for your guest, Dr. Vibe, and Dr. Vibe, if you'd like to put some input, I'd really like that also.
Sure.
Lawrence and Lamont, you said you was in education for what, 30 years now? Is that correct?
No,
Well, for me, it's
Okay.
getting close to 30. For me, yes.
he just
Yes.
Lawrence just looks good for his age because black don't crack and beige don't age. So.
So, and how about you, for Lamont, Dr. Lamont? How many years have you been in?
I'm going into year 18.
Okay, so you've been in more than 15. Now, this is just a kind of a personal question, kind of a devil's advocate question, and it's one I asked in the chat, but I'll ask it myself. In your years of education, do you think that there is more or less of a showing of more or less of critical thinking skills in children today, and also a lack of moral standards? I'm not talking about Christian moral standards because that's kind of broad, but just in general, yes sir, no sir, no ma'am, opening doors for people, pulling out chairs, just that in general. Also, just kind of adding in here, what's your views on the educational system getting rid of extracurricular activities such as band, getting rid of music appreciation, encouraging people to become ham radio operators, shop, learning, teaching people how to build things, children like that. And the last question I kind of have, I know we're talking about public high school, public education, but what about private education, church funded schools, and also private education about homeschools? What's your view on homeschools?
Tony, hold on. You gave about 5 questions
I
all at
know
once.
I did, but I just wanted to.
So let's do one at a time. So what was the first question?
Well,
About discipline and moral standards, right?
Well, yeah, my first question is the lack or the gain. Do you see a lack or a strength in critical thinking and moral standards in children today?
Okay, that's part 1. So, gentlemen, answer that one.
Okay, so I'll chime in. I've always thought that there was a lack of critical thinking in education, or there was a lack of emphasis on allowing our students, our babies, to be critical thinkers. Oftentimes, I would convey that education is very microwave-ish. What I mean by that is just like, give me the answer. I don't want to know how or the ways in which you came to the answer, but just give me the answer. And so when I taught third grade, I taught third grade several times, but one year in particular, had a great group of young people. And, it was very funny, right? Because it was very Socratic in that classroom, because students used to ask me and I'll say, well, what do you think? And the students used to always say, I don't know why you asked him for the answer. You know he's not going to give it to you. And they used to start asking each other, well, what do you think? So really posing them to think a little bit more in depth and to think critically. And so, that's the thing that it's kind of resurfacing, but it's really superficial. It's not really any in-depth thinking, thinking about thinking, metacognitive, right? So there's not any of that type of thing. You're still like thinking about reading, what you're thinking about while you're reading, those type of things. I mean, they throw these terms out, but they're not really invested in getting the students to think critically. Because again, if students thought critically, they would challenge a lot of stuff that they're hearing from the teachers, and teachers don't want that. And so for me as an educator, I want students to challenge me respectfully, of course, because that kind of answers the next question. Yes, challenge me. I want to do things to challenge you. I want you to be uncomfortable. I don't want you just to take it coming out of my mouth, or take it just because I'm the educator or I'm the one in front of the classroom and you think, well, I just need to capitulate to what he's saying. No, I don't want that. As a matter of fact, that really pisses me off when students do that. I mean, just say exactly I say and put it in their own words. So I've always been an educator, a student of critical thought, critical thinking. Now, in terms of the morals and the moral compass, I think it's very demographical, and here's what I mean by that. So down south, where I did my undergrad and I visit, from time to time, they still have that pretty much ingrained. The yes ma'am, no sir, and everything. That still happens with authenticity. And again, that doesn't mean that they're so, morally, their moral compass is higher. But again, at least that superficial part of answering in respectful nature and everything is definitely there. Where I am currently, in the Pacific Northwest, I mean, it's very casual. I mean, very casual. So the president of my college, the vice president, my predecessor, I mean, they all want me to call them by their first name. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I was over at a colleague's house this weekend, and I'm like, no, your name is Mr. So-and-so, right? I'm not, he said, you could call me by my first name. I'm like, it's just hard for me to do that. So, and I guess that's just the ways in which I was reared. But I think a lot of students, again, I think it's, a demographical type situation, but I think some of the morals are kind of dissipating to a degree. And I'm not painting all students with a broad brush, but I think, a lot of the, the multi-mediums that we have, the mediums and everything, and all this other stuff. And I'm not saying they all trash, but again, it does show a lot of things that, very debaucherous, right? And sometimes the moral fabric of our young people often tends to.
So, Dr. Francies, critical thinking and moral standards in K to
Okay, I think Dr. Rasheed summed up everything. Let me just say this about the critical thinking skills. I totally agree with Dr. Rasheed, and I don't believe education right now promotes true critical thinking skills, because if you promoted that among the oppressed, then they could take down the very system that is oppressing them. So I agree with that. But I remember going into a room full of administrators, high-paid administrators, and I asked this question: what is the purpose of education? Everybody had their pie in the sky speech. Everybody said the purpose of education is to inspire minds for college and career, to give people a shot at life, yada, yada, yada. And they were all off. The chief objective of education is socialization. It's sorting. It's a sorting mechanism. We socialize kids how to behave. Okay. And so that's the purpose of education, right? And so kids are being taught how to act. Through our educational system, we are preparing Black boys for prison, Black girls for poverty. We prepare them to be lazy. We prepare them from elementary school on to think like they do and behave like they do. And then through testocracy, we control and punish. Okay, so we're not teaching them to analyze and think critically. So let me say this about the manners and the morals. Okay, schools, and I'm a pastor, so that's I'm speaking as a pastor and also an educator, right? And you hear from the pulpit all the time that they took God out of schools. They're no longer teaching morals, and they're no longer teaching the moral standards that this country once stood for. But then we have to ask ourselves this question: what did this country really stand for in the beginning? What would the same people that were talking about Pledge of Allegiance, okay, were calling us the N-word and said that we couldn't come to their schools? So, the morals and the standards that I know that I received in school came from, teachers. And I remember going to a daycare center, and I learned a lot of the morals and standards of that particular community from those teachers that looked like me, right? Who shared the moral compass that I had in my church, but they looked like me. So we have to be. I think we have to be careful when we talk about the morals and the standards, because a lot of them we have to look at them through a cultural lens, right? Are we teaching African American students in schools? And we know 80% of the teachers are white. Okay, disproportionately, they have an advantage in the school. Are we teaching them to be more like us? Or teaching them to be more like the dominant culture, or teaching them to assimilate through their manners, right? And so now all of a sudden education becomes a cultural dilemma, because if I take on your morals and your pedagogy and your culture and your customs, then all of a sudden being smart is being white. Does that make sense? So it's tough. Then our kids suffer from what they call the soft bigotry of low expectations, and they're not expected to think critically. And then when they display manners, okay, and they fight against the system because they don't want to lose who they are, then we control and punish through suspensions and in-house suspensions and detentions and all these other things. So it becomes this battle that never ever stops, if that makes sense. So let me stop there, because I have some other things to say. But
no problem. Before we go forward, Dr. Sheed, I think you should put yourself on mute if you're not talking, because I can hear your fan in the background. Yeah, there we go. All right.
There it is.
There we go. No problem. So, Tony, your next conversation piece, I just want to welcome back Dre, welcome Big Bad Brad, and I know Melvin Larts has a question. So, Tony, after you finish your question, Melvin, I'm going to ask you to come in and ask your question.
Yeah.
So go for it. Your next question, Tony.
Well, my next question was about how schools these days. I'm seeing a lot of schools are taking out the basic things that should be in school, like band, learning how to write in cursive, shop, learning how to do electronics, in shop. I asked one of my friends asked my nephew, well, are there any ham radio operators in your school? No. Why should there be? How many Boy Scouts are in your school? Don't know. That kind of thing. What's your viewpoint on that?
You want to talk about that, Lawrence, or you want me to?
Yeah. So
well, let me. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the trades, so the trades back when we were in high school, secondary school, wherever we attended, So we have the shops and those type of things, home economic, all there. But it seems as if there's been a pendulum swing where those are in some schools, but not all. And a lot of those trades are now, they have trade programs and they're offered at community colleges. And so to me, I think it's more about dollars. It's an economical situation where like, oh, we could utilize this to get money where, in the past, these skills were taught in high school. And so they got these requisite skills, these trade skills and everything. And then from that point, they were able to go out and get and attain good jobs, right? High paying jobs. And so those things, I mean, again, I think that was just the heart of it. Like, okay, we could do it differently. And of course, it was hidden under the guise that we need to focus more on education, right? But the bottom line, they were focusing more on test taking, and Dr. Francies alluded to that. And so we're going to take time away from the trades, building skills, things like that, working with your hands, so on and so forth. So you can spend more time, so it wasn't an altruistic, attempt. It was just an attempt to do better on the test. And when we look at these tests and everything, they don't really, prepare these young people for life or college for that matter. Because I'm talking about the state tests, right? I'm not talking about the ACT, SAT, those type of tests. I'm talking about, these high stake tests, that we have with, whether it was No Child Left Behind, and now it's, the new Common Core. So all these things are just about money. They're not about the students. And again, I often challenge the students. I say, hey, it's very interesting that during test taking week, they'll say this: make sure you get a good night's sleep, right? We're going to give you free breakfast for the whole week or the whole 2-week testing session. Testing session, that you can have breakfast free. And I always ask the students, I'm like, do they care about you or do they care about how well you do on the test? And students start to think about that, like, yeah, that makes sense. Because if you care about the students, right, and you want them to make sure they're getting a proper night's rest, and you want to make sure that they're eating a wholesome breakfast and everything, then that's something you should be doing all the time, not just for this given time. So again, we really see how superficial and fake and disingenuous a lot of these schools and school districts are, because again, they're just promoting a test and not promoting the well-being, the holistic well-being of these students. So again, I think it was caught up in economics, and it slowly started to come back in some schools. But to keep it real with you, a lot of these trade programs are really being instituted now back in a lot of the white schools, and so they're coming back, or they may have even never left, for that matter. Yeah. I don't know the research on that, but I know they were taking out inner city schools for a fact.
Dr. Francis, you want to add?
Yeah, let me just touch on that, because Mr. Davis, his question I think is very important when he talks about the trades being taken out of the school ban as curricular activities. So here you have an African American student. He is struggling in math, and so what the schools say, instead of giving him wood shop, let's give him 2 periods of math. Now, if I hate 1 period of algebra, give me 2 periods of algebra and I'm really going to hate it. Okay. And so everyone said, let's make these students in inner city schools college ready. Let's try to push them in college. Now, we know college is not for everyone, right? And so, but we're trying to push everybody to one field. Now, I'm a Generation Xer. My mother is a boomer. Father was a boomer. They could leave and graduate from high school and be a certified mechanic. They could leave and have go to wood shop, auto shop, metal shop, learn how to weld, learn a specific trade that allowed them to eat for life. So when we were growing up in the 80s and we lived in the inner city, we lived in the projects, there was always a guy that was on drugs. He was the neighborhood crackhead, but he could always eat because he knew how to change a carburetor. So he had a skill by which he could eat for life. And now what we're doing with our kids is that we're not giving them any skill by which they could eat or at least start their own business. And so we're giving them a bunch of knowledge and trying to force all of these kids to go to four-year universities. We know that's not happening. So what's happening to a lot of these kids, some of these kids are barely finished school. If they finish, they have a high school diploma that doesn't mean anything. Now, in the 1970s, mid-70s, what we saw was de-industrialization of the urban cities, right? So we saw Detroit go down, Gary go down. We saw these factories leave, right? And so because these factories have left, right? And because they left the inner cities, we start to see the rise of ghettos. We start to see the disappearing of the Black middle class, because there are no more working class families because they have nowhere to work, right? And so the schools decide to say, hey, we're going to take the trades out of the schools because we're giving them these skills, but they need jobs to go to. Then some of these Black folks got these skills, but then could not get into unions that were, these unions that were cut off from them because they were white owned, and white controlled. So I believe, and I do agree with Mr. Davis. I believe that we need to bring some form of the trade back to school, but part of me has a Booker T mentality. When I believe that we need to start looking at agriculture, we need to start teaching our kids trades. We need something, and I believe you build up the mind, right? But take me for instance. I have degrees in telecommunications, sociology, education, counseling, right? All of these jobs, I have to go through the white collar structure in order to be employed, right? And so, purpose of college. What is the purpose of college? One brother told me this. The purpose of college is to teach you how to work for white people, right? If you get a trade, if you get something that you can market, okay? When you learn to start your own business and work for yourself, as long as you work for somebody else, you'll never get paid what you work, right? So if you learn that, and we learn to invest in our own businesses and learn how to start our business and recycle our dollars with our business, I think that's when we can go somewhere. But in our schools, I think we have to bring back the trades. We have to go ahead and start bringing back the vocational arts, bring back the bands, bring back the musicians, bring back the creative side that a lot of our students, especially our African-American boys, have in the school. And I think that would greatly benefit our students.
Oh, yeah.
Tony, anything else?
I do have one more question, and I'll ask it and I'll hop off.
Okay.
But my other question was about private school versus public school. And I'm putting two things together. Private school meaning a high school that is funded by a church or a religious institution, or homeschools. What's your viewpoints on those two things? And again, I know Martin's wanting to get on, so I'll hop off. Or Melvin, excuse me, Melvin.
No problem.
And I'll hop off to let Melvin in. And Dr. Vaughn, it's you again. And gentlemen, it was good to express my opinions about that.
Always a pleasure, Tony. Be well.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
So
go ahead, Dr. Rasheed.
Thanks for the questions. So being a founder of a charter school, which is a public school, right, and then working in charter schools and public schools, again, both of them are public schools. I definitely could see the benefit of private school and homeschooling. Especially when we're talking about Black students, and we've discussed some of the things that they have to navigate, and we discussed some of the things that we Black educators, in particular Black male educators, have to navigate in order to be in those spaces. I definitely am a supporter of private schools, and here's why. So private schools, whether it's a religious-based private school or just a private school that has no religious affiliations, right? So you have less bureaucracy to deal with. So you don't have to measure up to Common Core or any of those standards like that. I mean, you could have somebody coming in that may not be credentialed, right? But they may be a physicist, all right? Or they may be a pastor, or they may be somebody with the acumen that could really give those babies what they need. So just because you're credentialed doesn't mean that you're qualified, in my opinion. Okay, that qualifies you in a lot of people's eyes and state's eyes and everything to teach, you know. But again, how many credentialed folk that we know, us four here, we know they can't teach a lick, right? How many administrators who have administrative credentials and everything know and they just got their position because of the network of nepotism, right? And so what homeschooling and private schooling does is allow you opportunity to thwart those things, right? That dynamic is not there as much. And again, I don't think any educational system is going to be perfect. However, I do feel that homeschooling and private schooling is a way much better option than traditional public school and or charter.
Dr. Francies?
So I want to go ahead and agree with Dr. Rasheed. I believe if we really want to change the narrative when it comes to Black education, we really have to explore starting our own private schools. Okay, it's been over 60 years, since Brown versus Board, and we've consistently finished at the bottom every year. Okay, if the shoe was on the other foot, and white boys were finishing at the bottom for the last 60 years, I wouldn't blame white parents. They would take their boys out immediately and start their own schools. But every year we are asked, we are begged, please give us another chance to fail your kids. So when you look at, I agree, I believe private school is the answer because you don't have to go through all the red tape and the bureaucracy of the state and the federal government, and the socialization that you have to deal with when it comes to educating your kids. But the thing is, when it comes to private schools, we understand, and me and Dr. Rasheed talked about even getting one going, but we understand that Blacks don't have the same generational wealth as their white counterparts, right? We understand that a lot of them don't have the money to afford the tuition, right? So one of the things when you talk about charter schools, right? Charter schools come into existence in 1990, and whites come up with charter schools because a lot of them wanted a private school education funded by the state, and they take the resources out of the public schools. And now in 2019, we see charter schools come into urban areas, and they're the white face of gentrification. Mm-hmm. But what we're seeing with the charter schools is they can be privately owned, and they're big business for a lot of people, right? And a lot of them, the charter schools mean well, but you see white corporations preying on children of color in urban areas to make money. So even with charter schools, I believe you have a problem with them as well. That's why I believe we can have our own private schools, but we have to prioritize as Black people. We have to see how much money we spend on hair care and Christmas gifts and Mercedes-Benz and alcohol and all these different things, because we are, the richest people of African descent on the face of the planet in America. So if we took the same kind of energy that we put into seeing Black Panther, and we put that into schools, educating our own, then we can go somewhere. And let me say this about schools and churches, because I know I'm speaking as a pastor, and I was in Wisconsin earlier this year doing a conference, and my topic was the role of the Black church and schooling and education. Slaves, former slaves, newly emancipated slaves were taught in the Black church. The Black church was responsible of taking a literacy rate of the slave. After 1865, after Emancipation Proclamation, it was at 90%. And by the turn of the century, it got down to about 50%. So they were, through Black churches, they were able to shrink the literacy rate by 40%.
Wow.
They believed in education, but you had dedicated people in churches that were not concerned about trying to use education to get rich or to sell books or to do all this other stuff. They believed in education. They said, we're going to teach our children to read, and we're going to teach our children to write. And so Black churches, because I think it's important that we understand this, education, and this is what we understand as Black people, because we are the soul of the church. Education is a spiritual event. It's a spiritual event. The reason why you see our boys in these classrooms reject the white teacher is because they're rejecting their spirit. Jesus says this. Now, I don't mean to start preaching, but I'll say this.
You're on a roll.
But Jesus, remember Jesus before he left, he says in the Gospel of John, he says, I'm going to, when I leave, I'm going to send you the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit is going to be a teacher. He's going to guide you into all truth. And so the Holy Spirit is the Spirit of Jesus. In other words, he says, before I connect with you, disciples, you have to be able to receive my spirit. And so as an educator in the classroom, when we educate our kids, we're not only giving them pedagogy, we're giving them our spirit. And if they sense your spirit is not right, you can be the best teacher in the world, but the kids will shut you down because they're going to see you as a lion tamer and you're trying to tranquilize me and make me become what I'm not, right? And so education is a spiritual event in and of itself. That's why I believe the Black churches, if we look at the Black church as a business, right? I believe somewhat $14 million every Sunday goes to the Black church. So it's the most successful business, if we look at it as a business as well, the business that we have in this country. If we look at that, we say, how can we take this successful business and say, you know what, let's go back to what we have, free, brown versus board, and let's educate our own children. Let's take these spiritual institutions and start to educate and enlighten the minds of our children right here from these churches. If we do that, you're going to see church membership go up. You're going to see tithes and offerings go up because now they're seeing that the money is going more, not just going to pastor appreciation and pastor vacation and big buildings, but we're using these buildings to educate our own students. This year, we at our church, we usually give out backpacks and pencils, and now everybody's doing it. Every single year, everybody's doing it. And I decided this year, no, we're not doing it. And they said, well, why, Pastor? These kids need pencils, backpacks, and all these other things. I said, we're not giving out pencils and backpacks and pens to kids who can barely read. These kids can't read. The scores are horrible. I said, let's hire tutors.
Yeah.
I said, that's Black empowerment. They don't mind Black charity. Let's do Black empowerment. That's what we should be doing in the churches. So I agree. Churches, and this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to get our own schools going. That's what we're trying to do.
All right. Well,
all right.
You're on fire there, man. You're on good fire. Good stuff. Well, and so that means another episode we're talking about the Black church. So that's coming up down the road.
I know.
All right. Before we let Melvin Lars on, and Melvin, thank you for your patience. Just want to shout out Irene Yvette. And she said, truth, indoctrination, and assimilation with a side of regurgitation. That's what. And she just said, dope to Dr. Rasheed's throwdown of the last few minutes. So I will now let Melvin Lars join the conversation. I'll be back in a second because I know you guys are good without me. And Dr. Rasheed, take yourself off mute. Melvin Lars, come join the conversation.
No problem. Thank you, Dr. Vibe. Hey, gentlemen, how you guys doing? I've been out and I haven't heard the entire conversation, but I'm an old school educator, gentlemen. Old school educator. Most people always talk about, and Dr. Vibe and Brother Rasheed heard this before, talk about lean on me and all of that stuff. I worked for Dr. George McKenna in LA, and Denzel played his part, etc. So, my thing being an old school educator is very simple. And I tell people all the time, once we get through pontificating and showing everybody how smart we are, and showing everybody how large our vocabularies are, we still have to get out and do the work. We still have to teach our parents. We have to transform neighborhoods, entire neighborhoods. It can be done. I've been blessed to have been a part of 5 of the happening, etc. Now, how does that happen? You have all of these intelligent, intellectual brothers running around town trying to be important, and our kids are dying on the vine. Now we can talk about all of the programs that have been taken out of the schools. We can talk about all of where the money is going. And as a matter of fact, I worked for the State Department of Michigan. I was a No Child Left Behind monitor for 7 years. So I'm well entrenched with that. And I must back up and say I'm not a proponent of private schools. Being a No Child Left Behind monitor, I'm not a proponent of private schools. I'll leave it there. But when we talk about education, and I was in and out, I'm sure you guys probably covered some of this. Again, if you do not affect the community that the children are coming from, then your job is always exponential. We don't have enough educators that are willing to educate the parent. As a matter of fact, tomorrow evening at 5:30, we are having a meeting called When Parents Go to School. Now, what is that meeting? You have old principals like myself, former superintendents like my wife. Then we inform the community on who you talk to, specifically when you go to the school. Why are you having problems? What are the reasons your son or daughter is not doing well, or why does he or she not know about certain scholarships that are available, et cetera, et cetera. So there's just so much work to be done that Dr. Rasheed alluded to it earlier as I was listening back in and forth. You have so many guys that are past the NTEs and all of that kind of thing. And you guys mentioned grandfathering and people getting in because of nepotism, but they have no concept or they have no real push to really make sure that children are actually educated. It's all about how important I can be, who's saying nice things about me, etc. And I will say this, I do say to my parents, I have angered over the years a lot of my colleagues. But they say, oh, well, I know Mr. Lawarence, and he's so nice. He should be nice if he was read properly. However, can he do the job? And I dealt with that a lot with people. Is the fact that singing Kumbaya, all of that's great. It does have its place. However, when you are not willing and when you are not dedicated to educate children, you probably need to find another profession. Because, God, let's face it, all of us know what to say when the cameras are on and when the microphones are in our faces. Is what we do after those cameras leave, after the microphones are turned off. That, my gentleman, and Dr. Bob, this is where I, again, as a former educator, as a person that's involved in education, I see it all the time. People don't know your background. So I'll go in and sit down and talk with principals, and I hear all the same rhetoric that they used 40 years ago. And it's like, sometimes I just get really irritated, and I just finally tell them, sir, I know exactly what you're saying. I've never seen you out in the neighborhood. I've never seen your teachers out in the neighborhood. I've never seen you have a parent appreciation night at your school. I've never seen teachers invited to your building. Parents, all I hear from teachers in your district is that parents shouldn't be here and they have no right to come. Or if you have what you call parent involvement, cooking cookies, helping you grade papers is not parental involvement. So until we get to the point that we really and truly understand that an education is real simple, all it means is learning more than you already knew. Until we get to the fact of really understanding that our children must know that they are facing double jeopardy. See, all this stuff about being afraid and not wanting to offend white people and they may think I'm racist. Come on, let's be honest. I said last night on the Dr. Vibe show, you get 4 educated black men that's on this set right now. Especially here in the United States, you walk into a store, you're immediately suspected. Doesn't matter that you're a professional. Doesn't matter not being cocky, just being honest. Doesn't matter that you probably have more money in your pocket than the people that's watching you. None of that matters. What matters is they see a person of color. So until our kids start to understand, first of all, that they're not on a level playing field, until the parents accept the fact that their kids are not on a level playing field, until the parents accept the fact that it's not the teacher's job to rear your children. And now, since we know all of those things, what are we going to help rectify the situation? Sitting at the school, sitting in our office, when we have a select number of students, that's why I say about private schools, when we have a select number of students that are going to do well with or without us, what are we talking about? We have nothing to brag about. These kids are going to do well anyway. And I've said to Dr. Vibe many times, even with me being an athlete, people heap praises upon coaches. Oh, he's nothing if he does not have, and I'm going to sound cocky, Dr. Vibe, he's nothing if he doesn't have star athletes like me. Let's just call it what it is. If he doesn't have star athletes, I don't care who it is, you're going to get your butt kicked. So school is no different. When you have a classroom or a building where you can make certain scores, and people say you have an A+ school or you have B+. And by the way, check out my credentials. Adrian High School was a blue ribbon school when I was assistant principal there. I didn't make it that, but it was a blue ribbon school. I've also worked in Quotient ghetto schools. However, we hang our hats on those students that are performing well anyway. So what happens to the throwaway kids? So I'm sure you guys probably covered all of that because I was in and out, but it just bothers me as an old man to see that in 2019, we're still having the same conversations about education. We're still having the same conversations about Black men going into education, but nobody want to talk about that second elephant in the room. And that second elephant in the room is real simple. We have embarrassed our Black men out of education. People say, oh, he's a teacher. That's nothing. They make no money. Except. So we have embarrassed Black teachers out of the classroom. And the we are people that look like the four on this set. And I'm done.
Oh, wow. Epic. So, gentlemen, what do you think, especially about the quote, Melvin feels that Blacks have embarrassed Black men out of the classroom?
Dr. Sheep?
Say what you feel, brother. Don't mind my feeling.
I'm thinking about that. Blacks have embarrassed Blacks out of the classroom. I don't. Yeah, because I think systemically, Dr. Francies was talking about Brown v. Board, and we know this, and Brother Lawarence knows this, being in the Jim Crow South, that we did have Black educators educating our babies prior to Brown v. Board. And so at that time, there was none of us, with those same sentiments as Brother Lawarence talking about, embarrassing us out of the classroom spaces. So I would kind of challenge it. I think systemically, I think we have kind of been erased from the classroom. Now, that doesn't mean that some of us haven't contributed to our own undoing, right? So that happens because we know we have, unfortunately, some of us who hate our own melanated skin, right? We hate the fact that we see, brothers on this panel and everything. Like, I hate them Negroes. They just think that they're better than anybody else. So we have those people of that ilk. But I think it's more of a systemic thing than more of us. But I definitely think that we do contribute sometimes. But I'll tend to lean more to a systemic thing, more so than us, pathologizing each other.
Let me just say this. Here's where I agree with Mr. Casey. First, I think you were dead on the money when you talked about Black educators in a lot of ways becoming celebrities and forgetting about the grassroots and forgetting what it's all about. The thing is, they say the easiest way to stop a Black revolutionary is to put them on payroll, right? And the minute they get paid, they forget about everything and they become a celebrity. And this is what, when we talk about the Reconstruction period in this country, when you talk about these educators, a lot of times who did not get paid because the former slaves didn't have the money to give them consistent checks. And the government, the Freedmen's Bureau, did not give them what they needed sometimes. And sometimes the check did not come in and they continued to educate anyway because they knew it was right. They knew it was, we have to get back to that. I think we definitely have to get back to that. Black men in education to agree with Dr. Rasheed. I think we have to start looking at it systematically. Now, I do agree that you do have some brothers that they like to be what we call the only Negro syndrome. They don't like other black men on campus with them because when we get there, all of a sudden they're no longer special just for being black. And just because they're our color doesn't mean they're our kind, right? And so we get that. And I can say this in education, and I'll say this. Some of them, the worst damage done to black students have been done by black teachers. I can say that, okay? Because they are, I think black is more than just your skin tone. It's a political identity. It's a spiritual identity. It's, and a lot of people don't subscribe that are racially black, culturally don't ascribe to blackness, right? Or don't carry that same level of responsibility to their own community to uplift their community. But then I also think that you got to look at it systematically, and you have to look at who is in control in schools. If we know 80% of the teachers in this country are white, majority of these teachers are white, middle class, female. We have to look at those interactions between the black man and the white female on K through 12 campuses, and sometimes how those interactions can go sour because you have these power plays. Sometimes black men are emasculated, right, on campus. I had one student, and I think I said it last time. I told him, get into education, become a teacher. You can become a principal. He says, why would I get an education when I see how they treat you, right? Why would I even want to get in this field? And I see how, and you guys are leaving left and right, right? So why would I want to get into this field? This field is complicated. And so you have that. And sometimes it is hard. It is hard because you are dominated. I mean, you are not respected, like Mr. Casey said, in the public sector. Like if you just go into a store, you get to your job, black men, we tend to get more degrees than anybody. We got more degrees than a thermometer, right? I have 3 masters and she has 2, and we have doctorate degrees and all these other things, yet we still don't get the job. Yet we still get discriminated against, even on, K through 12 campuses. We still have to go through all these things. And all we've done is accumulate more student loan debt. And we generationally, because of the racial wealth gap in this country, we don't have as much as our white counterpart anyway, who's getting the promotion. So all we did was get all these titles, get all these things, still have to deal with white supremacy on campus, right? So even when you talk about Reconstruction, when you talk about how we were able to close the literacy gap in 40 years in this country, still blacks were still discriminated against and still have to deal with Jim Crow, because even when you deal with, education, and people say, well, education is our ticket up. Yes and no, because you have to deal with the system of racism, right? You can have all the degrees in the world, but if you don't deal with the system of racism, you can have all the degrees in the world, and you still can't break through. You still can't overcome. So I think we have to learn how to break apart racism. We have to first learn how to detect it, learn how it operates institutionally, structurally, and then educate our students. But we have to deal with racism, So I agree with Mr. Casey in terms of how black men sometimes get an education and forget who they are. But at the same time, I don't think it's maybe not necessarily all black men are pushing other black men out. I think it's more the system, the dominant system as a whole, and who's controlling it that's pushing black men out than other black men. Because I tell you this, when I see another brother and he has some level of cultural relevancy and we're able to culturally connect, I embrace that brother. That brother embraces me. And sometimes you find yourself as the only black teacher on campus. You're more closer to the black janitor and the black coach and the black security guard than you are to your other colleagues.
Powerful stuff. Well, I think we're going to start winding it down because these gentlemen have been on for a little while. Plus, I want them to be able to lead another life outside of the suit and tie. So we're going to start winding down. So, gentlemen, and We do have a room open if anyone wants to add in one little more thing before we start winding it down. So, gentlemen, what messages do you have when it comes to Black male teachers K to 12 for Black parents first?
Go ahead, She.
Well, I got to refer to you because you're Black parents.
So I
and all
believe the
that
question
stuff,
is,
so
what do we say to Black parents
you go first,
when it comes
brother.
to Black male people? But I would say, and I run several parent groups for African American parents to advocate for them, to teach them advocacy. What I would say to them is support your Black male teacher. Okay, support that brother. If, and I'll say if that brother is about uplifting our children, and if that brother is solid and he's concerned with the empowering of Black minds, if he is, then support him wholeheartedly. And what I mean by that is work with him with your kids. If he asks you to do something, go above and beyond for that Black teacher, right? If he asks you to bring something in, if he tells you to bring food bring more food. If he asks you for supply, bring supplies. You bring the other white teacher an apple, bring him a bag of apples, bring him apples, oranges, and grapes. Make sure that you are not, trying to make that Black male teacher your husband, right? He's doing the best he can, right? He's getting it from the white teachers there. He's also while he's on campus, he's getting it from even Black students who, when he tries to discipline them, the first thing they say is, "You're not my daddy." So he gets rejection there. We say Black parents come in, and I can say this: the majority of the Black parents that I've come in contact with have been very supportive, but they know I invest in their kids and they invest in me. And then I become a member of the family. I'm the person that you'll see in your church. I'm the person that you'll see in your supermarket. I'm the person that will be at your child's games. I'm the person that will be like an uncle to your children. I'm the person that will be at the graduation when he hasn't or she hasn't been in my classroom in years. I'm that person. So I would tell to the Black parents, just support the Black, the Black male teachers, and figure out a way in any way that you can to assist him while he's assisting your child.
Anything you want to add, Doctor? Okay, Dr. Rasheed frozen. So I'm going to ask, no problem. So I'm going to ask you, Dr. Francies, about another group. What is your message to the education system when it comes to Black male teachers from K to 12?
What I would tell the system is be empathetic. Be empathetic to the plight of Black men, what we go through, what we face in this society, the disparities, the discrimination, the racism, the racial microaggressions. Be empathetic. Understand what we go through on a daily basis. And then hire a brother. I don't know what else to say. Hire a brother. Give us a chance to be more than disciplinarians. Give us a chance to be educational leaders. Help us build that. Give us a chance to prove that we know how to educate our kids and your children. And know that when you don't hire us, you are culturally crippling your students. Because in another 30 years, the United States is going to be majority minority. And you can't continue to afford to use the same excuse that you've been using for years. Well, the reason why we don't have Black teachers is because they just don't apply. And we just didn't think he would fit in here. Stop using those excuses. They're here. They're applying. You know it. The district office knows it. You have to be able to give them a chance. If being Black for years have been a negative, if it's been something that has been used against us, then being a Black man in education, as rare as we are, should be a positive. it should be something that you look at as a positive to your students. And if you give your students the interaction with a Black male, especially in the elementary school level, especially at an early age, I want you to think about how that's going to, especially if that white child grows up to be an officer, how that is going to change how they deal with Black people when they come in contact, when they're, on the job, right? Because they'll remember that Black male teacher that they had in third grade, and they won't buy into the stereotype that they see on TV projected in the media, because they'll realize that he's a human being just like me. Dr. Rasheed. You there?
Dr. Rasheed? Okay. I don't think he can hear us. So then I'm going to leave. Dr. Rasheed, can you hear us? No.
I'll try to answer.
Okay. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna
his audio.
Yeah, I'm gonna kick him out so you can try and come back in, because he's using. Yeah, we can hear you, but we can't hear you clearly. So what I'm gonna do then is, if he comes back in, so the final message in regards to this subject, the final group is Black children. What is your message to Black children when it comes to Black male educators from K to 12?
Same thing. Black children, give us a chance. Give us a chance. Understand that Black men face mass incarceration, discrimination, racism on the job. And the reason why a lot of, our homes, and we have, 66%, about 2/3 of our homes are headed by women, is because we face, state sanctioned terrorism. We face the crack epidemic. We don't own the boats. We didn't create mass incarceration, right? And so a lot of Black children are upset at their fathers because they're not in the home, right? And sometimes they take it on the Black male teacher. So allow us to come in, allow us to teach. I was that angry young Black man, and anytime a Black man would tell me something, first thing I would say is, "You're not my daddy." And what I was really asking is, where is my daddy, right? Why isn't he in my life? Give us a chance. Learn from us. And we care about you. We live in your communities. We're part of the entire Black family. And so give us a chance to go ahead and come in, not into your classroom, but come into your life and come into your heart and revolutionize how you see education. Dr. Rasheed.
We're going to give Dr. Heath another chance, but to see, every time he kicks himself out, it just means more of an answer he has to give. So now you have to be a triple threat, Dr. Rasheed. You have to give a feed in regards to this topic, a message for Black parents, the education system, and Black children. We know you can do it, so make it happen. Go get it. Let's get it.
Yeah, let me apologize. The internet's acting real light skinned. I don't know what's going on with that. Man, it's been tripping today. It's a conspiracy. But anyway, let me address the question. First, I think the parents should really hear the brother or sister out in this matter, but we're talking about Black males, the brother out, and give them an opportunity. And here's what I mean by that, because we shouldn't view every Black male educator, as a monolith, like they're going to be the same way. And we heard from Dre earlier, and he said his approach was different from the vice principals. So oftentimes we come in and just have these assumptions about what these Black male educators are, the ways in which they're going to perform. So I think, there should be some, mutual understanding of, where, this Black male educator is coming from and where the parents are coming from. And I think similarly to what Dr. Francies said, there should be this form of inoculation. When you have these Black male educators there that are altruistic and they really care about your babies and care about you and care about the community, they're going to come under some type of pressure. They're going to be on the hit list because, again, oftentimes they are often able to attain the type of power that other educators and sometimes administrators are not able to do, because they galvanize that within the community. So again, with that, they're going to be public enemy number one. They're going to have a big target on their back and front. And so with that being said, the Black parents, and again, this is one of the reasons why the work Dr. Francies is so important, is to make sure you can have these educators back, right, in front, that you could create this type of safety net when they're being attacked for just doing what we really want them to do. And so I think there should be some mutual understanding and when you're approaching these brothers and give them opportunity, right? And so the next question I thought was about.
So we've got we have
the educational system,
education system, and Black children.
Yeah. So I mean, we talked about this all the time. The educational system wasn't and isn't really designed to benefit Black students. I mean, that's not a newsflash. That's why we have so many people homeschooling and going to private school, because the system is not, I mean, the system is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing, and that's undereducating Black students. And yes, we have some that, make it not because of the system, but in spite of the system, right? And again, so we know the system in itself is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's a conduit, it's conduit for the school to prison pipeline. I mean, it's just there, and it's the ilk. And so even though I say that, and it sounds kind of hypocritical and contradictory, right? But we still need good brothers and sisters within that system kind of thwart it. We still need that spook who sat by the door, who's actually in it, but not of it. So, and again, I love education, how it's supposed to be. But I think the ways in which it is more schooling. It's more of an indoctrination, right? It's more of a dumbing down. Like G. Woodson say, it's more of a the miseducation of the Negro, right? And so that's how the system is. And it has been there for a while. It has been there for a while. And the last thing is the babies themselves.
Yes, the young Black children.
Yeah. So, the babies don't understand that they're brilliant. They really don't know, because they've been beat down so often. I mean, as early as preschool, right? I mean, we hear this, especially when we talk about Black boys, just being big, Black, and a boy, and you're being surveillance, right? And you're getting kicked out of preschool. You're being suspended. You're being, expelled out of preschool. I mean, that's ridiculous. But these type of things are happening ongoingly. And so when I think about the babies, I mean, there needs to be some early intervention. There needs to be, and it has to be holistic. So we know Black males aren't being hired. We know that. So what are we going to do about that? We can't keep complaining about we're not being hired. So what are we doing to thwart that? I mean, we know we have systems in place, like, programs, for example, they call me Mr. who, that program is pretty much proliferated throughout the South, right? I mean, it started in Clemson, now it's in Tennessee and some, Southern, it's in quite a few universities right now. And so that's a great program, an attempt to get brothers in the classroom, but it's not happening soon enough. So we have to have schools, that are doing great things. There's a brother by the name of Q Butter in New York City who has like an online school, and it's a all African-American school, is doing great things. And there's other brothers and sisters who have their own private schools or homeschool networks. So we really have to support those, in my opinion, we have to support those endeavors, because that's the only ways in which we're going to be able to kind of, really educate our babies the way they need to be and socialize them, right? And so to learn that they're more than just, Africans that were enslaved, right? To learn more that they're more than just, a sister who's shaking her butt or twerking, right? To teach them about Sarah Bartman, Hottentot Venus, to teach them about Altabinga, the brother who was at the zoo. They went to go see Neck, and he was in a cage with the monkey, the orangutans and everything. To teach them that they're not, right? To teach them about their rich history instead of his story. And so those things are only going to come from us. And again, we have some, some white altruistic people are really truly allies that get it and kind of like stay in their position and help when it's appropriate to do so. But again, not having this paternalistic attitude where like I'm the white savior and I know what's best for you. None of that. And so, the babies need to really kind of have that, that opportunity to have people such as Dr. Francies, Melvin Lars, I mean, all the brothers and sisters who are educators and everything. We really need to make sure, even if we're working in public institutions and everything, which is fine, but I think we still need to have some type of contribution to these homeschool networks, these private schools. And even if we're not getting paid, right, and if our time allows us to do that, we should be, supporting these endeavors. So I think, our babies are just going to benefit more from it. So, but after the current construction is, our babies are beautiful, they're brilliant, and they're not hearing that enough, and they're not being held accountable enough. There's not enough warm demanding. It's a lot of letting them skate. It's a lot of, still nipples being placed in the mouth when there's sometimes there needs to be more, a heavy-handed approach. And again, it should vary depending on the situation, right? And again, our young, beautiful Black babies, they're genius. They deserve that. But oftentimes they've been written off.
Yeah.
Okay, we are going to end it because we're running down on recording time, just like last time. But that's what makes it epic. Just like to say thanks to both outstanding Black male thought leaders for jumping in. If you could you give contact information? Dr. Lamont, what's the best way people can reach out to you?
Reach out to me. Let's see. I'm not a big social media person. You can reach out. You can always email me privately. LFRAN512 at yahoo.com is my email address if you want to email me. If you want to visit our church site, www.deltabaycoc.org. That's the church that I pastor. Those are the easiest ways to contact me. If you want to contact me, you had any questions about anything I said or anything that we can collaborate with. So that's the easiest way to contact me.
Thank you much, Dr. Rasheed.
On Twitter, I think is 1906_power, or is it the other way around? Dr. Vibe has my back.
You got it right the first time. Good for you.
There it is there on Twitter. I tweet every now and again. So you can find me there. Facebook, if you want to see some crazy posts and some political posts, you can catch me with my name. Definitely if you want to hit me directly, I see my brother shaking his head because First Lady's on there. She sees some of the crazy stuff I post.
Yeah, all the time.
So, but if you want to hit me directly, power_1906 at yahoo.com. Love to converse with you, love to collaborate, especially if it pertains to, really ameliorating our babies, our Black babies in particular.
Okay. Well, before I sign off, I'd like to thank a whole mess of people. So on the YouTube side, I'd like to say, and she was on for most of the conversation, Irene Yvette, thank you so much. And thanks for everyone who watched this live on YouTube. On the Get Vocal platform, let's start with Joseph Burke, Bobby, Chris Neal, Badges, Big Bad Brad, Shannon, Dr. Tachi, Luke, Melvin Lars. We also had Dre on and also Tony. Thank you so much for helping make it an epic conversation. If you want to find out more about me, the best place to go to is www.thedrvibeshow.com. Next time I should be on Get Vocal is Wednesday night with Dr. Tachi and Leah Miller. We call them Black Lady Magic, and they drop knowledge bombs big time. So certainly check it out there. As always, I like to end off my conversations with live your life as a dream if you can dream it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger, block assumptions, and then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. God bless, peace be all. Keep the faith. Thanks for watching this live on the replay. Good night, everyone.
All right, take care.
All right, peace.